All right, we can go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. I'm Brianna Martin. I'm the Senior Marketing and Events Manager at Mighty Citizen. We're here today for building your 2022 communications plan, a very popular topic. So thank you for joining us. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. So the total time that we have allotted today for the webinar is 75 minutes. And depending on questions, we may end a little early, but it is, like I said, very popular. Typically, we have lots of questions. So hopefully you can stay on with us for the majority of it. If you do have any questions during the webinar, please make sure you put them in the Q&A section as opposed to the chat if you can. This will just help us keep them in line and make sure that we can get to them. And then
Brianna, I'm going to interrupt you before you do that. So I want to point out something here because we are, in this, you're going to hear me talk a little bit about audience research and surveys as part of this. And I just want you to know that the reason that this webinar is as long as it is because of an audience survey. So the feedback we kept getting back from our viewers is that we need more time for questions. We need more time for that. So we've allowed for that. So this is a value add of you said it, we're delivering it. So hopefully y'all have a lot of questions. Okay, great. I'm sorry, take it back.
Good point. Good point. And then last but not least, I had also put it in the chat, the presentation slides, a link to the recording, and then a few other tools will be sent to each attendee in the next few days. So don't feel pressured to take notes. On the slide there, you can see the annual communications plan template that we're going to be reviewing today. You can go ahead and download. I'm going to share that link in the chat right now. That is where you can download it. All right, so I'm excited to introduce our speakers today. We have Rachel Clemens, Mighty Citizen's Chief Marketing Officer, and Nicole Ruggiero, our Client Engagement Director. Rachel is going to start us off. So Rachel, mic's all yours.
Yeah, here we go. Y'all, we're going to build a 2022 communications plan. That's what's going to happen. We're not going to do it today, but I'm going to set you up for everything you need to do it today. I think having a nice buttoned up with a bow on it communications plan at the end of the year is just like getting a gift from Santa. For me, it makes my year and sets me up really excited to go into the next year. So I hope y'all are feeling the same. We did this session last year and I started with a collective deep breath of recovery for 2020. I feel like we could probably use this again for 2021. So deep breath. We are going into 2022 with optimism. So that is my goal today. If you're not familiar with me, I'm Rachel Clemens. I'm CMO here at Mighty Citizen. I've been doing communications for 20 years, 20 plus years. My strength is storytelling. My weakness, I chose queso. I could have chosen any number of things. But for those of you that may not be familiar, if this is your first introduction to Mighty Citizen, we are a branding, marketing, and digital agency for mission-driven organizations. Effectively, what that means is we help our clients increase their revenue, build their awareness, and better their communities through things like branding and messaging and campaigns and websites and analytics. Basically, anything that's comms related, we do it. I'm joined today by Nicole. Nicole, you want to give us an intro?
I would love to, but first I'd like to say thank you. I'm just so happy that all of y'all are with us today. Your inboxes are full of invitations and you have a lot of different places and a lot of different duties. So it means a lot to us that you're choosing to learn about a communications plan with us today. So thank you for that. It's great to be with you. I'm Nicole Ruggiero. I'm the Client Engagement Director with Mighty Citizen. I have been working with associations for well over 20 years. Again, like Rachel, I'm not going to tell you how many years. I even sit on the ASAE board of directors. And my strength is definitely communication. I absolutely love it. Face-to-face is my favorite type of communication. I'm very accustomed now to the Zoom communication style that has come up over the past 2 years. But overall, I'm just genuinely passionate about people, building connections, and really doing great work. And that's why I love to work with organizations like you, the mission-driven ones. So my weakness is also communication. Succinct is not typically an attribute that's used to describe me. And some may actually say that I can make a short story long, I can drag it out a little bit. So keep that in mind if Rachel goes, hey, Nicole, let's move this forward a little bit. But we're going to move this forward so we can get to your questions.
Move it forward right now.
We're going to move it forward right now. So as communications departments, we are faced with a ton of challenges. Current events is a big challenge. In 2021, it feels like it's just a continuation of 2020 in a lot of ways. We're still dealing with the pandemic. Vaccines and safety protocols are still part of our everyday conversation. Organizations are really taking a deeper dive into DEI, which is much needed, but you're also dealing with a lot more. We're still seeing a lot of shifting priorities. Let's take events, for example. We're having it in person, it's virtual. It's in person, it's virtual. We don't know on a day-to-day basis what's going on with the events. The work styles have still changed. Organizations now are leasing their offices. Many are still working virtually. They're also, their members or their audiences are working from home as well. So they don't have their addresses to do any type of direct mailing campaigns. So that's a struggle there. There's staffing changes. Organizations that I see, they're doing so much more with less. We're also faced with supply chain issues and inflation. We were just talking this morning on my coffee call that I host about paper supply shortages and the costs of those materials to get that. And so in the communications realm, that impacts how you're going to communicate. Governance is still and will always be, I think, a challenge for communications teams. The approval process can sometimes be difficult, especially if leadership doesn't see the value in marketing and communications. Sometimes there's just too many cooks in the kitchen, or you're waiting on other departments to get their plans together. Sometimes you're just not on the same schedule. There's also just an overload of information. We have so many different ways to communicate. Our audiences are overwhelmed. We're overwhelmed. We really have to be strategic about how we send information and how we receive information. And I'm going to add something to this. Technology, while it's so great when we can implement new technology, and I know a lot of organizations are implementing new marketing automation platforms or new AMS systems or new CRMs or a new website. While it's great to do that and the long-term value is definitely there, it still disrupts the routine. And certainly that impacts how you disseminate your communications. So there's a lot going on this list.
Nicole, I think I added one kind of last minute, the other people in departments.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Sometimes I wish marketing and communications lived in a vacuum, but we don't. Therefore, we have to try to coordinate.
They don't. And that goes back to some people not being on the same schedule as you are. I know, let me tell you, Rachel plans out. And it takes a lot for me because I have to get on her calendar schedule in order to, if I want something done versus when I want it done, which is, hey, Rachel, what are you doing? Can we do this tomorrow? Yeah, it's not going to happen. All right. So we communicate in so many different ways with our audiences. We have direct mail. We have our website. We're doing webinars like today. There's social media, but there's 15 different types of social media. There's magazines and your events. And did I forget to mention that we're doing surveys and we're asking them to participate in research and sending them press releases and videos and podcasts and newsletters and emails. And then we want them to take advantage of promotions to sell products. And as exhausting as this list is, and it's a little overwhelming, honestly, it's not complete. There's so many other things that aren't on this list. So we have to be really cognizant of how we work with our clients and how we work with our audiences, how we communicate to them and the best ways to reach them. And
I know y'all feel this.
Yeah, we all do.
I feel this especially, we're a small marketing team, and last year it was like there were so many things to respond to. It was constant. Like you couldn't even really get into a plan because the minute you tried to, something changed and you had to have a response. And it had to be across these different channels and these different messages across different audiences. It has just felt very scattered. I'm looking forward to what I hope will be sort of back to like what normal cadence looks like.
Normal cadence. Can you define normal cadence? Because I don't know what it looks like anymore. Planned cadence. I like that term better than normal.
Planned not so much chaos, maybe.
Yes, that'll work.
So by the end of this session today, you'll be able to understand how to own the communications plan. So who owns it? What does that look like? What does ownership look like? How do you report on it to the people who care about it or maybe should care about it? Identifying what's in this plan, your goals, your activities, your tactics. We're going to walk you through all of this. And that way you'll know what you're going to do next year and also the value of what you're going to do next year. We're going to talk a lot about value in this session, the value of marketing. We're going to talk about how to manage your plan so it's relevant to your team, your own internal team, assuming you have one, but also relevant to your stakeholders and your leadership. And just, given the state of the world today, it's time to really reevaluate. I think we've been in this system of chaos for the last couple of years. I'm hoping we can kind of go, that was weird. Here's what worked in the last couple of years, and here's what really didn't, and just kind of rethink things as we head into the new year. We will be sharing, and Bree has shared in the chat, a link to grab a communications plan template, and we're going to walk you through that. If you want to go ahead and grab it, great. You can do that and follow along. You don't have to grab it right this minute.
Yep. And it will be emailed later. So don't forget that either.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to fire up a poll. Do you have a marketing and communications plan? Okay, so options are yes, and it's written down. Yes, but it lives in many places, including my head. Not yet, but I'm in the process of writing it. Not yet, but we plan to this year, or no. And while y'all are getting your responses in, you'll notice that I have marketing/communications. Here at Mighty System, we don't distinguish between them as if they are two different things. Most of our clients, they're doing both marketing and communications. It lives in the same department, not large enough to have two different departments. And really, in my mind, comms kind of covers just about everything. Okay, let's see our results here. So the highest result was about 35% of you guys said yes, but it lives in many places, including my head. I feel that. And then not yet, but we plan to this year. Great, you're in the right place. And then we're sort of mixed between you're in the process of it and it's written down. We do have 15% who have a written plan. So that's great. I imagine you might be here to go, I have a written plan. Is it what it should be? What do other people put in theirs? So I've done a lot of that myself. So thank you. Let's see. Oh, there's the results. I'm sorry, I didn't realize they weren't shared. Okay, now let's see. Let's go back here. So today, there are lots of reasons that we need plans, okay? There are lots of reasons you probably don't have a plan. You might be a one-person shop and you're like, it exists only for me. Nobody else is ever gonna look at this. I don't need to write it down. It could be that the world you live in changes so frequently, and we felt this last couple of years, that you think, well, if I write it down, it's going to change next week and it'll be obsolete and it's not worth it. But today, everybody is getting that plan. So I'm excited for all of us. We're playing the part of Oprah today. I've always wanted to be Oprah. So
Look under your chairs.
You get a plan. Look under your chairs. Okay. Why are plans must-haves? They force you to focus on strategy versus tactics. So think of strategy as what you're going to do, and the tactics are how you're going to do it. A lot of times we want to jump right in. I'm going to do this event. I'm going to write this, think piece. Those things are tactics. They're not strategies. Think about why you'd be doing those things. So they kind of force you to do that. If you were to focus only on tactics without strategy, you would be wasting time and energy. And none of us have excess time and energy, let's be honest.
And I'm going to say, I am more of a tactical person, or at least I'm going to say I used to be. You can see in my almost 3 years working with Rachel and using tools like this, she has trained me to become more strategic, and it's good for me. It's good for Mighty Citizen. It's definitely good for Rachel.
Yeah, if you're thinking about this in your organization, you're thinking, how do I get people to be more strategic? Because we face this a lot. If you're the only person really thinking about strategy, you kind of get dragged into the tactics. Having things that people have to fill out to think through these things before they just ask you for them is really one of the ways that we have done that internally. Hey, Nicole, you have this idea for this piece you want to create. I want you to list these 3 things before you give it to me. Why are we doing it? Who's it for?
She hands me our campaign template, which, by the way, can be used for anything in your organization. Help you think through it. Why do we need this? Who's it going to serve? Why is it important? What happens if we don't? And all of this strategy wise.
That way she knows it's important enough to give it to me before it comes to me.
Yep.
They help you to set goals. How do you know if you've accomplished anything if you don't know what you're setting out to accomplish? So goals we'll talk a lot more about goals. They help show the value of marketing and communications. You are going to share this plan with the higher ups in other departments. The plan shows how communications, your department, helps to reach organizational goals. That is really important. We're going to talk a lot about the value of marketing, and the way you show your value is to show how you are helping your organization reach its top level goals. Helps you to explain why you're doing what you're doing. They have to be agreed upon, and you know, it's easy to for people to go, okay, that sounds good, but when they know why you're trying to do something, they're a little bit more bought in. They help you say no. I know this is complicated. I know it's not every organization has a culture where you are empowered to say no. However, when you have a plan and you've shared it with other departments or your higher ups, and they have said, yep, that sounds good, that ladders up to our organizational goals, and they want you to come do something else for them later that takes you off track, it is easier to say to them, either that doesn't line up with our goals, or if it's a good idea and it does line up with your goals, okay, we can do this. What are we not going to do that we already agreed to do? Because unless you're getting more staffing, more money, more resources, there's a good chance you're not going to be able to do everything. So this gives you the power, maybe the authority to say no.
And Rachel does this to me. Rachel does, it's not that she does this to me, but I often, because I'm out and about and I have these ideas, oh, this would be great. I just heard this hot topic. Can we build this new podcast or this new blog article or whatever it is that I need? And she says, okay, well, let's look at our plan. Is it really going to help us achieve those results? Is this something that's going to make a difference? Can we fit it into our schedule? If not, what can we get rid of? What are you willing to sacrifice for this? And she makes me think, and we make that decision together. So it's really about camaraderie and having consensus from the very start of the year that this is the plan that we're going to work on. And anything that comes against that, not to say we can't do it, but we're going to evaluate it and see how it'll fit in.
Yeah, so like for last year, we were planning to do an in-person event, and luckily for us, it was in the fall of 2020. When we figured out we couldn't do that, there were other ideas we were able to surface up. So sometimes that can happen too. You go, you know, not right now. This is a good idea, not right now. So we were able to, we kind of had the opposite effect. I can now say yes. What does that look like?
He said yes to the past two things I've asked her for. I'm just going to put that out.
So look out.
Yeah.
It's about time for a no, Nicole.
I know. Probability statistical.
Yeah. It helps you build a budget. If you don't know what you're doing, how do you know how much money to invest in it? So we'll talk more about that as well. And it helps you align marketing with other departments. So that is really key. Helps them to see how you're going to support them. And then also might help them to see what you're going to need from them throughout the year. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it gets the team moving in sync. And when I say the team, I do mean other departments as well, but mostly I mean your team. You know, some of you are going to be solo departments, but a lot of you do have team members, and it just keeps everybody moving in sync. And that's right. I couldn't resist. I am a child of the, well, I was a teenager in the 90s. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about ownership of the plan. It is led by your senior most communications staff member. And that is because they are the one that has the big picture over everything. They're the ones that should be talking to leadership about organizational goals and know what's coming. They're the ones that are more plugged in. And so they're going to draft the initial plan. Okay. And then they will solicit ideas from others. First, I always start with my team. So there's 3 of us on the internal marketing team at Mighty Citizen. So I go, hey guys, here's the plan. Give me feedback on things I'm missing. What have we talked about that's not in here? Are there any new ideas you have that we want to talk about? We get that sort of locked within the marketing department, and then we share it with the sales team and like my boss. And so we then share it up the ladder and make sure people see that their goals are getting met through our work. That's really important. And so, you know, for some of you, that might be an exec team. You might be sharing it with a committee, a board committee, perhaps. Mm-hmm. There's lots of different groups you might need to share it with, but that always lives with that senior most comms person. Yep, we talked about that, sharing it with the full communications team and sharing it with your bosses that they have buy-in. The worst case scenario is you don't share it with them. They don't know it exists. 6 months later, they're asking you for something and they really don't understand why you can't do it. It does set you up to be able to, you know, make those arguments later. One of the ways that when we're, thinking about our plan, so we gather ideas and have an initial brainstorm session to walk through what's going to be in the plan. So it's November. If we're trying to get our plan done by the end of the year, that may or may not happen, but we don't have a lot of time, kind of got to get on it here a little bit. One way to start is to kind of go, what have we talked about doing? For Mighty Citizen, we keep a running log of marketing ideas, and we keep it throughout the year. And this is just a spreadsheet basically, and so anybody can add an idea in here. Nicole, come in an idea, I'll add an idea. And then we have these yes, maybe, and no categories. And when we go to do our planning, we kind of come through here and go, what is an idea that might make sense for next year based on our goals? And so you can see a few here, some of them are easy. Once a quarter, revising our thinking on an old blog post, that's pretty easy for us to do. It's not a heavy lift. Create a marketing maturity scale, that's a heavy lift. And P.S., that's a sneak peek. We are launching a marketing maturity index model in early 2022. So that's one that got a yes last year. So you'll see that they kind of go yes, and then they kind of come in and out. If you say no, it's not a this is a bad idea. No. It is we're not going to prioritize this. The only thing that gets a yes is we're going to prioritize this for next year.
Yep. And I use this tool a lot. As I mentioned, I'm the one that's out at events who are talking with association leaders, and I'm hearing the topics that are coming back. So oftentimes as I come back or on my morning coffee, as a topic comes up, I'll come in, I'll fill it out. And Rachel will look at it, and she does monthly content planning meetings. If it's something that can be done in the meantime, she'll add it to it or maybe swap out a content. But if it's a bigger lift, that might be something that gets tabled for the next year, depending on what it is. But at least it's a great tool to be collaborative, and it's really easy. So I don't lose thought of that idea either. I access this all year long.
And it's easier on us, so we're not getting an email every time somebody has an idea. So it's been nice for that reason. We have to keep reminding people that it exists because they forget. But I'll also add here that we keep this running for the year. We plan for the year, so we're going to plan for 2022. We're in the middle of it right now, but our content is only planned quarterly. So that way we're able to be more nimble when it comes to our content versus our ongoing planning.
Yeah.
Okay, Bree has shared this link in the chat, and I think she shared a direct link as well. But if you want to go grab it, as we're about to go into the sections of this template, it is an editable Word doc. We use it in Google Docs so that we can all edit it. So I highly recommend that. And it is completely customizable. If you've got sections that we don't have, go ahead and add them in there if they serve your needs. Or if something we have in there doesn't fit your needs, then go ahead and delete it. It can be yours.
And there are some questions here because people have to fill out information in order to download it. Can you explain a little bit how that information is used?
Oh yeah, if you you signed up for this webinar as well. So same thing, you're going to get monthly insights emails. It's a monthly newsletter. It gives you information about upcoming events, articles we've written in the last month, and tools. And they're all, I think, super valuable.
Mm-hmm. We've gotten really good feedback on them. Okay.
All right, let's talk about what goes into a communications plan. Nicole, you're up.
Let's do it. So a dear association industry leader, John Graham, has been known to say that if you've seen one association, you've seen one association. And in my history and in working with all of the organizations I've worked with, I feel that same concept applies to nonprofits and universities and government entities as well. Each organization is very, very unique. If you've seen one, you've seen one. They all face a lot of the same challenges, and they might be similar, but they have different industries and different communication needs depending on those audiences. So it's really essential that we understand best practices across communications, but that we really do the work to create a strategy that's going to really speak to the audiences of that particular organization. So we're going to help you walk through that today. And to help do that, Rachel and I work for Mighty Citizen. We don't have the privilege of sharing our clients' communications plans with you today. So what we did for fun and to help create a relevant example for this particular session is to create the fictitious International Association of Mighty Citizens. And yes, you need to do your power pose whenever that's said, because one, it's fun. Two, it's just great. Again, this is a fictitious organization, but we're going to showcase a couple of examples and we will reference this organization as we go through this session. I also want to use this as a shout out to the many mighty citizens in our industry that are on this webinar or that are doing great work, and that's you guys today. So thanks for being here. So with every campaign, every plan that we do, any initiative that Mighty Citizen has, we go through this checklist and it defines the organizational summary, the market analysis, the audiences, and the goals. And Rachel's going to kick this off and take you through the organizational summary.
Yeah, so if you happen to have that plan in front of you, you'll see this is in the table of context. This is the order that the plan follows and that we're going to follow today. And the first section is called the organizational summary. The first piece within that section is an executive summary. So basically, you're probably pretty used to this. It's just kind of a short and succinct view of the plan for your executives, including your overarching goals. So what are your big plans for the year? Basically giving anyone insight into what all is in this, potentially 10 to 20 page document. You don't want your leadership or your execs reading the full document. That they don't have time for that. They don't need the details of that. So you're going to give them an executive summary, 1 to 2 pages that just sort of tells them overarching like what you're going to do for the year. It is an opportunity to showcase your vision. Some things that are in there, like we had an anniversary a couple of years ago. I was like, all right, it's our 20th anniversary. To celebrate that anniversary, we're going to do this and this year. We saw last year that this worked, and so we're going to double down on this. So it's just sort of broad in terms of what's in that plan. You do write it last. If you were to sit there and try to write your executive summary, you would just sort of like, it'd be a moment of just stall. You're going to fill out everything else first. Come back and write that executive summary. So much easier once you've been living and breathing your document to get it succinctly in there. Also included in this section is your vision. What would the world look like when your work is done? Your mission statement. What do you do every day to accomplish that vision? Those two elements you probably already have. They're very standard, especially in mission-driven organizations. No need to rewrite them unless they need a relook. Most of you will not need to rewrite them. That's the easiest part of the plan. Copy and paste them right on in there. And the reason for that is it just reminds people why you're doing anything related to this plan to begin with. What's the why behind everything? You're also going to list your products and services. What do you offer to people and what are those things called? Is that what everyone calls them? We'll give you an example. So using the International Association of Mighty Citizens, here's what our here's what our products and services look like. So, we're an association, we have membership, we have certifications, we have education, we have events, advocacy, we even have a foundation. So go ahead and list your products and services along with what are the outcomes of those products and services so that everyone within your organization calls them the same thing. For example, one organization that says that they have advocacy, another organization might say our legislative efforts. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter what you call it, it needs to be geared toward your organization, but as long as everybody's speaking the same thing. So this is an effort to really make you think about what you're offering people, and then also that everybody calls it the same thing. And then whatever you decide to call it, those things show up on your website. If you're going to have a section on advocacy, then call it advocacy. So it all lines up across the board. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and also list your communications personnel. I saw in the chat, some of you are like, oh my gosh, I wish I had a comms person. Well, if you're not a comms person, but you're living the life and having to build a plan as if you're a comms person, go ahead and put yourself on that list. You belong there. In our dream scenario, the International Association of Mighty Citizens has 5 people in our marketing department. Why not? Why not be bigger and when you're dreaming?
Sure.
And so this list includes the titles. You don't need to put someone's name. You can. We happen to do that in ours, but you also don't have to. You can list their title and then list their overarching responsibilities. This is good practice in general, especially when you're hiring someone new. What are they going to take off of somebody else's plate? So it's an accountability chart. You're listing, what each of these people is responsible for. Each organization's structure is different. I wish it was as easy as saying, you know, we're 3 people, my fourth person should be an event coordinator. It's not that simple. Yours may not include these people or these levels, and that's okay. Let's see. Also keep in mind that there may be people that are marketing that are not in your department. So if you're on the comms team and there's an events team and they have a event coordinator that handles some of the marketing, you might list them over here because they are doing marketing for the organization. All right, budget. We talked about value. So if you're not familiar with Peter Drucker, he's a pioneer of business thinking, 20th century, amazing person. He has this great quote that says, the business enterprise has 2 and only 2 basic functions. I'm so curious what's running through y'all's mind right now about what this is. But the 2 things are marketing and innovation. Drucker says that marketing and innovation produce results, and everything else in the business is cost. Marketing is the distinguishing, unique function of the business. What he's really saying here is that marketing is an investment. If you think of it as a cost, if you're, you know, in marketing and you think of marketing as a cost, it's time to change your thinking. Marketing absolutely provides return on investment, right? If it doesn't, you got a new goal for 2022. Figure out how it's providing return on investment. And if it's not, you got to shake things up. So if you're not thinking of it this way, start there. And then you've got to make sure that your leadership thinks of marketing this way as well. Overall, marketing should be just like a stock and increases in value long-term. So just if you're not having conversations about this with your leadership team, if they're not asking you what value are you returning, set to thinking about having those conversations. They absolutely should see your value.
Absolutely. And this communications plan and how you communicate it, which we'll get into later, is really going to give you the ammunition you need to make some of those choices and to help leadership understand the value of it. You know, Rachel, I look at this quote and I just think back, you know, if I had a great new product that I just built in my garage, but I don't tell anybody about it, is anyone going to buy it?
Right.
I mean, that's that. If you don't tell people, they're never going to come. If you don't ask, they're never going to donate. If you don't show your value and communicate that to them, they're never going to join. If they don't know about the event, how can they possibly? So, I mean, marketing is definitely I call it, I consider it like a sales function. I think my role is more of a personification of marketing versus an actual, you know, I'm revenue generating, but you're just as revenue generating.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you know, we all lived through 2020.
Yeah, we did.
A lot of marketing budgets got caught getting cut, you know, and yeah, it should be seen as an investment. It's just not always.
Well, and that's, you know, there's a lot of education that can be done in our industries and in our organizations themselves. And sometimes that takes baby steps too.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of budget, we have, at that link that Bree has been sharing, we have a new budget tool. So it's the end of the year. We're all building our budget. Well, a lot of us are building our budgets. There is a marketing and communications budget template available. And again, you can add to it or take things out as you need to, but that's the budget that we use, that we build every year.
Okay.
All right, Nicole.
All right, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about market analysis. Everybody, wah! Okay. Mighty Citizen, here in our operation, we really cannot stress enough the importance of knowing your audiences and the trends that you're facing in your industry. So I'm going to ask you, you know, have you completed any market research? Do you need to? Do you know the upcoming trends and challenges that are facing your marketplace? If not, you need to do this research. You know, you're going to look 2 years, 5 years, 10 years out and really see what's going to be happening. That foresight is going to really help you in how you communicate and grow the organizations that you work with. You can get this information from many different ways. You can do surveys and ask your members, your donors, your supporters, and your other audiences. Other organizations like associations, industry partners, or for-profit companies often conduct research, and you can read those reports. There's other industry blogs and resources that you can get that information to understand the industry trends that are happening. You also need to have a good handle on what is your market position. Where do you sit in the marketplace and what makes you especially compelling? Consumer Brands calls this market share. You know, what metrics do you use? And how are you comparing yourself to others? Is it locally, regional organizations, nationally? in differentiating your market position, are you doing that based on budget and membership, on growth, or on Google search result rankings? There's a million different ways to measure it, but your organization has to dive in and say, okay, how can I look and find out where I sit in my industry and in my marketplace? So we also need to understand your unique value proposition. What do you do better than anyone else, and how do you showcase this? And I'm going to make a note here, because in 2020, we've done a lot of work with organizations on crafting that value proposition, because there is often a very big disconnect in what you see as an organization, in what you offer versus what your users and your audiences hear. And that, we can often fill that gap, having that outside view, take a look at that and really see what they're hearing and try and create that messaging that speaks to what that value proposition is. So that is something that we've seen organizations struggle with in 2020. So lastly, I want to talk about understanding your competition. What are they doing well? What are their weaknesses, and how do you position yourself against them? Remember, competitors aren't always other associations or nonprofits or universities. It's who's pulling the attention away from your audiences. My guess it's Netflix right now, or those of us who are dying for warmer weather. Any warm day will take my attention away from anything I'm doing. But as an example, for the International Association of Mighty Citizens, our competition would include other agencies, educational content coming from associations or industry partners, perhaps even like the American Marketing Association is what I would see our competition to be. But what we're tasked with as communicators is, how do we prove to our audience that their time is better spent with us on our resources, in our events, on our tools, and using our education. All of this information, the industry research, the market position, the value proposition, the information on your competitors, all of that is going to help you fill in the gaps to create that communications plan to address all of those areas. Okay.
It's a big slide.
You guys are complicated entities, but you know this. Even the most simplistic one amongst you has complications. The truth is that you're speaking to so many different audiences. You have to create communications that speak to each of those in different ways in many cases in order to get action from your audiences. Nonprofits are tasked with donors, but they not only have donors, they have individual givers or major donors or corporate giving. You have your funders, your clients, your volunteers, your community leaders, associations. There's so many different types of membership. You have your prospective members, your current members, your lapsed members, your new members, your students, your associates, your international members. Then you have your chapters and your components and your volunteers and your donors and your legislators and the community leaders and the general public at large. Universities are no less complex. They have students and alumni and donors and parents and faculty and staff, and then community leaders. And government agencies, well, that really depends on what project you're on. I mean, you could be building something for mothers. You could be building something for families. You could be building something for seniors. It's the general public, federal and state leaders to get buy-in, agencies, government employees, and contractors. The audiences are immense, especially when you dig in there. So part of this communications plan is really digging in and finding out who your target audiences are and how you're going to prioritize them in 2022. So, and how do you decide who gets the most attention? The audiences as a whole, this year, like Rachel said, things changed. This year we might have been focused on legislative buy-in and getting some bills passed. In 2022, we're focused on membership and growing and retaining membership. So those are two different focuses. And so from year to year, you have to look at this. You can't just assume that last year I focused on this as my primary audience. Next year, I'm going to do the same audience. You really have to look at this on an annual basis. Okay, it is poll time again. So I'm going to ask, at your organizations, do you currently have audience personas or user profiles. So I'm going to define those a little bit for you before you jump in and answer. Both of these are used in similar ways, but a user profile is a higher level overview versus the deeper dive personas. Both contain demographics and motivations and pain points, but a persona requires a lot more in-depth research, time, and budget to create. A user profile is often created based on what we think and what we believe and what we've heard, with some minor research to confirm it. So it can often be done in a lot quicker process. Both of them are very viable, but I wanted to know who's using them. Yes, you have, and they're written down. That's a key word, they're written down. Yes, but they live mostly in my mind. I love that answer. Not yet, but we're in the process of creating them. Not yet, but we plan to do this year, and no. So let's see let's give you a little bit of time to answer those results. I'm not in control of the controls.
I've got the results for
Okay.
you, Nicole.
Rachel's in control of all of the screens.
For better or worse.
Here's the power.
33% said they don't have them, which means, 70% do, or sorry, no, that's not true. 33% they said they don't. 13% not yet, but we plan to this year, and 11 are at not yet, but we're in the process. 18% said they do and they're written down, and then 24% said yes, but they mostly live in my head. So about 40% overall do have something. In the chat, people are saying, well, I was planning to this year and never quite got to it. And they're certainly not alone. And someone else said they're taking time off to do the time off to work on their duties and get this done. So it is a pain point for all of us.
I'm going to ask Brianna, can you pull up the personas on the Move article and throw that into the chat just for future reading, if y'all, for those of you who are creating them, to give you some insight on that. But we're going to talk a little bit more about personas. Okay, so I'm going to work through these examples, but before I do that, I want to kind of further explain personas and dive in a little bit deeper. So again, personas are really concrete representations of your audiences. They include demographic data like age, roles, length of time in the industry, and psychographic information. Why are they engaging with your organization? What motivates them? What are they hurting? What are their challenges? Personas really answer, what are your users challenged with, and what are they trying to do when they engage with you, and why are they turning to you to fix it? So that answers all of these questions. And again, all of this information comes from surveys, stakeholder interviews, focus group research, and all of that industry data that you can obtain. So when you have a persona, you can create a really targeted communication plan that speaks to your audience in the place where they find their media and in the language and messaging that they understand. And that's essential. I want to caution you, though, that you've seen the really big, vast amount of audiences that your organizations are dealing with. There's a ton of audiences. And if you could spend all of 2022 slicing and dicing and creating personas for all the different types of audiences, and that's going to be way too much, and you'll never reach your goals because you'll spend so much time on building personas. So be really particular. Prioritize based on your organizational strategies to define what audiences you're going to create these personas for, and what you're going to create them and how you're going to use them. Don't create them and let them sit. This is something that you want to create to build and strengthen your communications. So
you could create personas for everybody, but you better have a big team. You're trying to put that on your shoulders. I don't even think our team of 5 fictitious Mighty Citizen communications team members could do that. They could not. Another thing I'll add is that if you are thinking about your comms plan for 2022, and we are on this persona section, and you're like, I do not have this done. Oh my gosh, I do not have this done. I don't have the time or resources to get this done before I do this comms plan. That is okay. Personas take time, they take resources. You may not have them right now, but you can use what you do know about your audiences to get some idea of who you're going to talk to this year. We've seen that list of all the audiences that we have. We probably can't give them all equal attention this year. So highlight the ones you are going to focus on as it relates to your goals in that marketing plan. You can actually say, this year we're going to focus more on these audiences. These other audiences we're going to serve with some content or something, but they're just not as important in 2022. So that is okay. Don't let a lack of personas or user profiles slow down your momentum.
Not at all. And I challenge you, if you don't have personas and you don't have profiles, anything, start that data, like just start collecting that data. What do you know about this one audience type? And then when you run into that person at a meeting or that type of member in a communication, ask them a couple questions and let's dig in a little bit deeper. Even if you come back next year and you know 3 more things about that audience type, that's huge success. So you don't have, you can do the small wins. You don't have to do this big, gigantic project. So I want to talk a little bit about the 2 examples that we show here. So, yep, she's moving the screens.
Here we go. We're ready. We're ready.
We're good. We're good. So in the case of the International Association of Mighty Citizens, we chose to create 2 personas, a new member persona who is Annette. Now, Annette just recently joined. She's been to a webinar or 2. She's dipping her toes in the water of what is membership and why am I here? I know I need something. I'm looking for something. So we're going to take all the information that we created on her, and we're going to use all of that to acquire new members, new audience members. Then we have on the right, we have Stephen. Stephen is the dream member. He has been highly engaged for many, many years. He even sat on our board. He encourages all of his staff to use our education and to even get certified with our programs. He is the person and the persona that we're going to use to create all of our renewal and retention marketing to create more engagement with existing audiences that we have. So that's how we're going to use these. And you can see in each of those samples, there's different pain points. There's different reasons why they came, why they joined, why they stay. All of that information is going to help us build our messaging and communications platforms. All right. So you have your audiences. You've chosen, let's say, 5 audience types that you've created personas for and that you're going to target in 2022. And now what we want you to do is actually list out some of your key current members, donors, customers, and audiences, the ones that you really want to target this year. So these are people who are, they're maybe 3 years in or something, and you just want to, but they attend 1 event a year. You want them to attend more events, or whatever that motivation is. You want them to engage more with your organization. So you're going to write them down, and you're going to figure that as you, how you're going to work that into the communications plan to target them and grow that current membership or that current audience. Then you're going to list out your prospective members, donors, customers, or audiences. You know who these people are. These are the people that when you see their name, you're like, why haven't they joined yet? Or why haven't they donated to my cause? Like, they're here, I see them, they're right on the cusp, but they just haven't made it over the finish line here. Those are the companies that we want you to list in that target prospective member section. Okay, then we want you to look at channels. Where are people engaging with you? Is it on social media? And if so, which one? Is it LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube? There's so many options. And again, you can't be everywhere. I'm going to say that you can't be everywhere and you can't be everything to everyone. So, but is it through your emails? Is it through your newsletters or your events? Figure out what channels that these individuals, the ones that you've listed down, are engaging with you. And that's where you want to show up. So this is how you decide how to target them, how to create that communications plan. So the personas or profiles that you've created are really going to help you target and reach those audience members that you're looking for.
All right, goals is the last section, y'all. We're nearing the finish line here. I want you to set 3 communications goals. 3 is about right. And you don't have to set 3, but I have found that 3 is about the right number. And you want them to be big goals. I'll give you an example of this in a minute. But they are kind of, large. Having said that, you can't overcommit. So we have 3 people on our staff, on our department. And so I have a general sense of what 3 people can get done. We've been doing that this year. I have some sense of that. What I'm not going to do is try to put too much into the plan, and then we're just never going to get to things. People are counting on those things. I try to really limit what we say we can do. We had a question the last time we gave this webinar, and somebody was like, how do you make room for those things that just come up? Because truthfully, we can plan today for 2022, but by May, June, there's just going to be things that pop up that we didn't plan for. And so I always buffer. I say, okay, I know 3 people can get roughly this much done. I'm going to put 85% into the plan. I'm going to leave a little buffer of about 15% for things that I don't know and can't anticipate. We know they're going to come. So I do plan for what we can get done at about an 85% level. You're going to list these goals in order of priority. Okay. So at the first goal is the one that has to get done. The second one, in priority order. And the reason for that is when something comes up, as it will, you can quickly identify what should get cut, because the stuff at the bottom is the stuff that's just not as important. These goals should be broad and strategic. Remember, they are laddering up to organizational goals. If your org has a goal to increase revenue by 10%, whatever that looks like for your organization next year, then you got to have marketing goals that are going to help reach that 10% revenue number. Your leadership should be able to see their goals in your plan. Just touched on that. This is what our fictitious 2022 goals look like for the International Association of Mighty Citizens. Hey, look, this is where they show up in the executive summary. They also show up in the goals section, but remember I told you, in the executive summary, you list out your goals. Here's what that might look like. So our goals are retain membership. In our fictitious world, we saw an increase in members over 2021, and we want to maintain them in 2022. We also want to increase our revenue through the usage of our products and services. And we're a new organization as of this meeting, so we are going to increase our brand awareness as well. You'll notice that these don't have metrics when they're listed in the executive summary. We're going to get to that next. I'll show you how to build those in. But just note that in that executive summary, you're listing the very high level. And you see how they're big goals. Again, if our goal is to increase, our organizational goal is to increase revenue by 10%, you can see that showing up in our goals. Okay. Under goals, you're going to list activities that are needed in order to reach that goal. This is where your tactics come in. So if the goal is to retain membership, what needs to happen in order to reach that goal? You might have somewhere between 1 and 5 activities per goal. For those activities, how will you measure whether those activities are successful? We're going to take a look at an example here in a minute. So every goal should have every activity should have a metric. Make sure you understand how you're going to measure success, and then what tactics are needed to complete that activity. This is where your little tasks come in. All those little things you got to do every day through the year. This is the tactics are laddering up again to activities and to goals. So it's just a structure that helps you make sure those tactics you're doing are actually leveraging up to something. Here's an example of what this looks like for the International Association of Mighty Citizens. Taking our #1 goal to retain membership, the first activity we think we need to do is to improve our new member onboarding experience. We know that to retain members, we have to make sure they have a great experience right out of the gate. So we need to have them experience the value of their membership and their benefits right away. And we know that membership is an emotional decision. So we need to connect them to the organization quickly, have them find their people, their local network, and to facilitate conversations for them. So that's our #1 activity. How will we know we've been successful? We will see an 80% renewal in year 1. Now, if you're an association, you have members, your number could be anywhere on the scale of 0 to 100 in terms of renewal. For us, we think we can get 8 out of 10 people to renew in year 1. How do you set your metric? I think this is really important. A lot of times, if we're doing a new goal, we don't really know what that metric should be. We don't have any, experience with that goal or any benchmark data for our organization. But there's usually something that exists to help you set a metric, whether it's your own Google Analytics. Maybe you've got some web data that would help inform what your metric should be. There may be industry benchmarks. Maybe the association that serves your industry has done some research and has bits of information about this. There's also organizations that put out research. So for example, if you're a nonprofit and you're going to try digital ads for the first time, there is data out there that says the most nonprofits that run digital ads see this much engagement and have this many likes. Those things you can put in here. Talking to others, that's really important. Do you have resources to talk to other people within your industries who maybe have done something like this before, and they can give you an idea of what your metric should be? It needs to be based on something. At the worst, it's based on your best gut instinct, but really we try to base it on something, because if you're guessing, it's hard to get people to invest in it, right? I will often set a stretch metric. I like to do this because sometimes what happens is we end up hitting our goal earlier than we expected. And then I'm like, oh.
Rachel's also an overachiever. If anybody
I
didn't realize that, she's
I
a
am.
overachiever.
I am. So, excuse me. So, yeah, I'll set a stretch metric. Sometimes we hit it and sometimes we don't. And that's totally fine because it's a stretch. Then you're going to list your tactics. So what are the things that have to happen in order to improve your new member onboarding experience? In our example, we're going to work on a welcome kit, both digital and print options with clear instructions on how to register and access members only content. So again, getting them set up right away. We're going to have a Mighty Citizen badge. That sounds fun. I like that. And a benefit reminder document. We're going to send them monthly social and email posts showcasing single benefits. We have a lot of benefits. We'll make sure they understand them. Easy steps on how to use them. We're going to set up a welcome call from the chapter and give them a social shout out on our national. We're thinking big here, y'all. And then we're going to review new member stats and identify trends for inactive members. So these are the things, these are the tasks that have to happen. And when I go and figure out what my team is going to do all year, these are the things they're going to do to ladder up to that activity that ladders up to that goal.
And this is why she says 3 goals only.
Yeah, see how big they are? I mean,
they get big. They get big. And you look at activity too, you know, we want to increase annual meeting attendance. Well, that's because statistically in our research, it shows that members who are retained have attended our annual meeting. So we want those first year members to get into that annual meeting right away. So, and Rachel, I just want to be conscious of the time here. It's 3:27 and we have this overachieving audience has like at least 20 questions in the group. So we want to move this forward a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to go. This is the last section. Let's go ahead and open our poll.
Yep, we're going to talk about managing the plan. So how often do you think you need to check back in, or how often do you check back in on this plan now? Do you do it more than monthly, quarterly? I don't have a regular cadence. I don't have a marketing communications plan until after today.
Yeah, we're getting results in, Nicole. I'm just going to leave them open for a second here.
You are in control.
Yeah. Okay, they're still coming in. People are still flying in. I can tell you right now that 42% are saying they don't have a marketing communications plan.
All right. I'm so glad you're here.
But you know, it does mean that 60% do.
That's true.
That's pretty good. All right, I'm going to end our poll, y'all. Get them in. Last chance. All right, let's share those results.
All right.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't have a regular cadence. That's the most popular one. The one that 27% say they don't really check it back on it in any regularity.
Well, we're going to make that easy on you here. Okay, let's move forward here. So we want you to check the status of the plan at least monthly. You just want to glance at it, take a look at it, make sure that everything's moving in the right direction. Is it where it should be? Do you need to make any strategic changes? You're going to actually go in and do an update every single quarter. And the reason we want you to do that is because we want you to make notations in that so that you can report back about it. And you really want to capture some metrics each quarter when you do that. So if you can go to the next slide, we're going to show you an example here. So at Mighty Citizen, we use a lot of Google Docs, and this is a great way for our team to stay collaborative with each other. It's also a really great way to see updates in history quickly. But taking you back to the example, you know, Rachel had said our top goal is to retain member growth. And as part of that, we're going to fast forward. So let's assume that now, as of September 30th, 2022, we're looking at this report and Rachel has said, yes, we have hit 85% of that goal. Our plan is working. We're doing what we need to do. We're now heading towards that stretch. So this is why we do this, because you want to look back and you should be able to see each quarter and see the updates that are happening here in one place. And anyone who has access to this document can see it, but you're also going to share that. We're going to show you how to share that. I want to mention, because going back to, you know, the plans that we create may need to be changed. You know, it's the reality. If we go back to the crazy year that was 2020, I know we've tried to forget it, but we can't. The fact is that once the pandemic hit, we had to scrap our whole entire plan. We decided at that point, do we revise it or do we scrap it? And so much had changed with the world that we said, we're going to table that one and we're going to start fresh with fresh eyes. How do we help our audiences at this point? So you'll know when it's time to modify and do a quick change within the document, or when it's time to start from scratch again. So trust your gut on that. So, in managing the plan, you want to make sure that you share a plan and the updates with the team and keep everyone moving in the right direction. We really suggest that you share with your executives on a quarterly basis. And when I say executives, that could be the board, it could be committees, but it's especially anyone who's giving you funds. That's extremely important. You want to make sure that you're sharing updates with them at least quarterly.
And the value of those updates.
And the value
numbers
of it.
alone don't tell the story, especially people not trained in communications. So when you're sharing numbers with them, make sure you explain to them what those numbers actually mean and how they ladder up again to the organizational goals.
Yep. It's almost you're showing how the comms team is actually helping with the lift of the entire organization. So you also want to share with the full staff periodically, kind of throughout the year, just a higher level. But you want them to have some buy-in into what you're doing as well, and showcase the value of the communications team and how they're supporting the organization as a whole as well. So you're going to do that. Most importantly, anytime you get a new staff member, as part of that onboarding program, you want to show them this communications plan so that, again, from the start, they know what you guys are doing. And if that new employee is a CEO or a CFO, you really need to make sure that you showcase not only what you're doing, but how that ladders up to the organizational goals. Sharing this information gives you visibility, which allows you, when you say, hey, I need a new staff member, and here's what I could get done with this new staff member, it allows you to do that when they know what's happening. Okay, so we don't want to overcomplicate things or make your lives harder. We know you have a lot to do, so we want to make sure that you're sharing the right bit of information at the right level. And this graphic really narrows that down for you. So we suggest giving a bite-sized bit of information to the full staff on a periodic basis. You're going to make sure that they're aware, and share your success stories. You want to give a snack size to the executive team on a quarterly basis. Again, what you're doing, how it ladders up to the goals, and statistics and ROI, any numbers that you have. That group really likes to see that. The communications team needs to get a full meal, and that's on a continual basis. This is your army on the ground. They are doing the work for this whole entire communications plan to be successful. So they really need to see that full picture. They also need to know where they stand so that they can identify when things need to change so that they can achieve the results that you've set forward. So if you can kind of create this communication cycle, everyone is going to be aware of where you stand, what successes you had, the value that the communications department is building. It can even create an environment where you're working better together. When they understand why you do some of the things that you do, they might have less complaints about why they have to go through the communications department when they want to post something on social media, or to add it to the newsletter, or why they have to follow brand guidelines. But they really need to understand what you're doing and the impact it has when they do that. And so keeping that communication line open really helps.
It builds trust that comms is on it.
It's true.
Paying attention, we know what we're doing. Okay, so to sum it all up, you need a written communications plan. I feel confident you are all going to have this as you head into 2022. Don't overcommit on your goals, but do think big. It's important to think big and then, go tactical from there, but don't overdo it and overtax your team. Get buy-in from the team, primarily your leadership. Make sure they're looking at this and understand the value of it. Set clear metrics so that you know what success looks like, and then track those and report on them quarterly. Bree's been sharing the slides and the annual comms plan template. Those things can be found at mightycitizen.com/comms plan, along with an editorial content calendar. So end of the year, we're planning content, and that marketing and comms budget I mentioned. So Bree, I'm going to hand it over to you for questions.
All righty. Yeah, we have lots of questions, which is great. There were some that were kind of similar that I was trying to consolidate. Let me share really quick the link one more time. So two kind of reoccurring things that I thought would be good to answer right off the bat is, a lot of people were, they're one person teams, very small staff, going through the entire template. It's a bit overwhelming for them. It's a lot of work. So, I guess the question is, is there a way to still use the info in a smaller capacity or, something that's a little more simplified, or would you recommend doing it all the way through? Because there's part of me is thinking, I know it's going to take a long time, but doing that work on the front end is going to save so much time in the long run. So thinking of it that way. But if you have any suggestions also to maybe trim it down, or, make it a little easier for a smaller team.
Yeah, so I mean, you can make it what you need it to be. On the organizational summary part, there's pieces. I would definitely keep the mission and vision and the executive summary. Those are pieces that are really important. Listing your products and services, maybe you've got a good handle on that already. Maybe you don't need to list out the team, it's just one person. Definitely think there are things you could cut there. You got to do your budget, that's necessary. On the market analysis side, again, if you're not, those can be a couple paragraphs, honestly. Or you can actually link over to research. Say you did some, Googling and found a great piece on where your industry is headed. Just say, hey, we're going to follow this, we think this is right on, and here's a link over to it. Doesn't have to be your own content necessarily. On the audiences side, we talked about the need for not necessarily having full-on personas if you don't have time or resources for that, but do jot down who your audiences are, what the segments are, and which ones you'll serve. I think that's really important. And then the goals, honestly, you've got to do the goals. There's really no cutting that section.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to mention here, because I'm a convert to this type of strategic thinking and the templates that our team has created. And I will say that I often get very overwhelmed thinking I don't have this information. But when I sit down and I start actually answering the questions that are in the template, I know more than I think I know. And it's just literally dedicating a couple of hours to sit down and go through it. And if I don't have it, finding it, or finding the contact at the organization who does have it and asking some key questions. It does not have to be perfect, especially in the first year. But you're putting it on paper and you're moving towards that more strategic direction, and you've got to pat yourself on the back for that. But if you're like me and you sit there and you're like, I don't have any of this information, you do have it. It's inside of you. You know your audiences. You know where they are. It might not be perfect, but it's going to be pretty accurate.
Great. So you had mentioned the audience profiles and or personas, and there were a few questions about that. One I thought that was really good was asking about how you develop them. So do you develop personas from focus groups or from research, or both?
You want to answer that, Nicole?
Well, actually, it can be from either or both. So it's, our team tends to build personas off of, we start with a discovery with the internal teams to understand what you know about your audience already. Then we do an audience survey, and we do some focus groups or stakeholder interviews. We tend to do stakeholder interviews over focus groups because they tend to be less biased. Sometimes you get a heavier voice in the room that kind of commandeers the conversation in a focus group. So we want to make sure that it's unbiased, and then we confirm some of the hypotheses that we have, or we get blown away with new things that we discover. And that's how we start building it. We also look at analytics, and we look at what are the results of what channels they're coming in on. So it's an evaluation of what you have available, honestly, and then what we're able to obtain. Rachel, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I see someone asked if we had a stakeholder interview template. We don't, because they're so custom to the client. But we do have survey information on our website. If you were to go to the website and search for surveys, you're going to find a webinar on how to do surveys, and then also a guide on how to create survey questions. I'll tell you that when it comes to personas, it's really easy to bias them. There are not a lot of things where I say you probably should hire somebody to do that, but this is one of them. It can be really easy to get them wrong.
I am just putting the insights link for you to go search that. Okay, let's see. Do you think it would make sense to do an annual communications plan as well as a quarterly comms plan?
I think the reason somebody thinks they might need that is that the annual plan is real big, and that maybe you need to get more tactical with the quarterly plan. You could definitely do that. So for us, it's like, I could keep going. I mean, if we create an onboarding experience and I create a welcome kit, that welcome kit has 12 tasks. Somebody's got to write it and edit it and create it. So there is a bunch of that you could go more narrow. quarterly if you felt the need to do that. For us, we have a project manager that helps us. And so we were able to do that without doing that.
Thank God for those project managers.
Thank God for project managers.
Okay, our organization has a good written comms marketing plan, but some of our staff see it as written in stone and are resistant to adapt as circumstances change, which I assume could be the case for other people. So, you know, how can you help, you know, move them to be a little more resistant,
A little more flexible.
Yeah.
I think the reason I would try to ask questions, why can't we have flexibility, is because so much upfront work has already been done that, like, I'm 70% there, we might as well finish this out. I could see that being it. I think also saying, I think we could get rid of this and add this instead. What do you think about that? So giving them, I think probably the main reason they have inflexibility or feels like it is because they're overwhelmed already. How can you remove overwhelm?
Okay, let's see. What are your suggestions on how to move your leadership executives to create timely company goals so you can use in your own planning? And on that same line, somebody else said, you know, how do you go about making your own goals when your organization doesn't even have strategic goals?
Yeah, I did that reaction initially because I actually had to fight. Mighty Citizen used to set our strategic goals in November, and I fought this year and got them in October. For this reason, I was like, it's too late, I can't plan. A lot of people don't have that, you know, relationship. But how do you ask your leadership to set goals? Maybe you're not asking all of the leadership to set goals. Maybe you go to your boss and say, I've got to set goals for next year. If we're not setting goals and measuring, how do we know we're successful? And ask them to work with you, put some time on their calendar to get some goals set, at least for you, if not for the whole organization. Timeliness, you might just be doing your planning into January. That wouldn't surprise me. Sometimes.
Is there a way to showcase the value of setting those goals early?
I mean, especially if you're doing budgeting. For me, budgeting is the reason you would do the goals early. I mean, it's hard to know what you're going to budget until you know what your plan is. And usually our budgets have to be locked. So if you had flexibility on budget, maybe you could go later, but that's a reason right there to do it earlier.
Right. A few people had asked this, and I saw in the chat, they were, you know, saying the senior communications person should be the one that's managing and leading. And oftentimes there's not a person like that, or we're the, you know, one man show. How do you decide who that person is if there's not this like designated role for that person?
Is there somebody that's willing to take it?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Just designate yourself if you want to manage.
No, if you've got 3 people and none of you are comms people, there's one of you that's more inclined to understand comms, you know, to be thinking about the message. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's going to fall to that person, or it's just not going to get done. But, you know, it's not a good option.
Right. Okay. How do we best discern what is truly valuable out of all the info we are bombarded with? So many things are branded as new or cutting edge, and they're just being renamed. So, you know, what do we do?
Do you think the person's asking, how do we know what to prioritize for ourselves, or when we're looking at other?
I think maybe I kind of read it as, you know, like cutting edge things in marketing, and maybe things that you want to test out or try or do. Yeah.
Okay, so I love to steal. Stealing is one of the best things you can do. As mission-driven organizations, we don't have money to play around with. This is not, so let's go let everybody else figure out what's actually going to work. Now by that, I don't mean let's wait 10 years, but I mean, let's be aware of what the cutting edge looks like and what it is. And let's watch people who are doing it and see if it works for them. You know, you and most people in mission-driven organizations are willing to talk to other people in mission-driven organizations. We have hearts. We want to help people out. If I were working at a small nonprofit and I saw the International Rescue Committee was doing something really cool with digital ads or retargeting, I'd try to reach out to somebody there and see if I couldn't talk to them. Whether or not they're going to give you time, I don't know, but like, I think stealing is a great idea. See what's working.
It's repurposing.
Yeah, somebody said it's repurposing, not stealing, which.
Yes, Evan, thank you for that.
Steal like an artist, which was a Picasso.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Evan. I'm loving Evan. Evan's like, I'm
Rip
sorry,
off
R&D,
and
rip off and
like
duplicate.
that. Oh man,
Love him.
I'm still.
That's great.
Somebody
Exactly.
says, can you share the marketing decisions matrix that was just referenced earlier? I think maybe,
Yes, matrix.
yeah, I think the marketing model. Is that what they
Oh,
mean?
you think it's the,
I think that might, yeah, I think you might mean the maturity model that was referenced. I was just gonna have you say what it is.
if they mean that, we're releasing next year.
It's a chart.
It's a chart.
Chart? I can show a chart for it.
Oh yeah, yeah, it was the chart that said yes, no, yes. There you go.
This one.
So it's something that we keep all year round, and people just add to it, and then we'll decide if it's something that we're gonna do, not do. And yeah,
we go through and look at it yearly. Honestly, you probably should be looking at it maybe quarterly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're about at time. We do have a lot more questions. If people want to stay on, we can ask a few more. And then, maybe just 3 or 4 more. We still have a decent amount of people on. So I will do that. Somebody says
there is one I want to challenge Rachel with, because I just love this. It says, I would love to discuss tactics and measurement behind increased brand awareness.
Ooh, okay. We recorded a video last week about how do you measure brand awareness. So it's going to be coming out in the next few months, but this one's really hard. I mean, this is, as long as there's been comms people, we've been trying to figure out the answer to this one. I would say there's generally 2 ways to do this. One is with some sort of research. So we always see this with rebrands. So if I were going to rebrand, first question I'm going to ask is, how do I know it's successful at the end of the day? Because it costs a lot of money to rebrand. And so I would run a survey before I rebranded. I would ask people, what do you think we do? What do you think our brand means? Like, I would ask perception questions, and like, how often do you interact with our brand? And so you run a survey, and then a year later, after the rebrand, you run another survey and you compare the results, right? So that's one way to measure brand awareness, or like market awareness type stuff. Another way is with other kind of quantitative numbers, which is like, how much direct traffic do we get to our website? If that number is growing, you probably have growing brand awareness. They're typing your name directly in the URL box. How much traffic do we have overall? Is our revenue growing? Are people, if I'm an association and I've got education offerings, are people getting more certifications or engaging with so figure out what growth looks like, and then brand awareness usually tracks pretty closely. How would I answer that?
Okay. Let's see what else. Sorry, I'm just trying to shift through them. There's lots.
Yeah.
My org has always produced a comms plan in a Word doc, table, lots of columns, but not a lot of details, mostly a running list. What do you think of this type of plan?
I think that can work. I mean, honestly, the plan that works best is the plan that works for you.
Right.
If it provides enough information to show value, that's a big thumbs up.
Right. Yeah. And I think having those goals, if they're not already in there, is really important.
Yeah.
Somebody says, any ideas on how to reach them without going to jail?
Maybe without killing someone in the process.
Yeah. Do you use or have recommendations implementing a plan through a project management tool?
I think what they might be wondering, like if we use Teamwork, there's Asana and all the other ones. We take those tactics and they become tasks, and then they have subtasks. So we do use our project management tool for every project we do, client or otherwise, and they get tasks assigned to them and people and time and all that other stuff.
Can I interrupt with one here? So this was asked earlier on, and it was, and Rachel, you're a small but mighty marketing communications team for sure, and I've seen you do some amazing things. But the question was, how do you help leadership see the benefit in prioritizing projects? Sometimes there can be a perception that everything can be done now and needs to be done now with a small team resource. So, and I know you see this.
Yeah.
What advice?
So much of that comes down to relationship that it's sort of hard to answer that question. For us, I just say, where are my resources?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do all that, here's what it's going to take. I'm going to need another, 20 hours a week from somebody, and I'm going to need this, or I need an outside consultant, and here's what that would cost. As the leader of that department, you have to be the champion for the people that work within it. And so I think nobody's going to be the voice if you're not. So if it seems hard to me that people would think that they would think the department wasn't pulling 100%. We don't see that in mission driven. Everybody's pulling 120%.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of saying no. At that point, you got to get real good at just being a little bit strong-willed.
Well, I will say from my perspective, coming in, because I'm a little pie in the sky. Oh, look what I thought of today. And I want to, Rachel, can we do this? I think, having the tools and putting this in place and setting those expectations where, Rachel has no problem whatsoever coming to me and saying, Nicole, great idea. Love it. But what are we cutting off the table to make that happen? Does that take priority over this one? And saying, I have this amount of staff, this is how they're working. Like, it's a conversation of again, that communication with leadership to say, here's what our capacity is. We can't possibly do everything. So where do you prioritize? And I think that communications really help with that too.
Or it's, hey, we have this other big initiative we're working on. We were set to launch in January. If you want to do this, we're not going to launch that until April.
Right.
How did we get this big event coming up? I can't do anything before that big event.
How did we get to hire Bree this year?
You
said I can do so much more.
Yeah, so we hired Bree in February, and the way we did that is last year during my planning, I did a budget or it wasn't a budget, it was more like a list of priorities. And I said, I had a column for good, better, and best. And good was me and Jarrett. As we stand today, here's the things we can get done. If I have Bree, the better option, here's the additional initiatives I can add now that I have Bree. And then I had the best, which includes some interns, which we didn't get, because you always put the thing you really think you need in the middle. And I said, with interns, we can also do this. And so Nick, our CEO, was then able to say, well, that's really important to me. So I guess I better find some money.
Yeah.
And we were able to show that we were able to get to better.
Yeah. At the end of this year, we'll have done the things I said we could do with an extra person.
I can't stress in everything that you do, like really finding what those key performance indicators are and what you're going to track to showcase the success, which will then give you the ammunition for the things you want in 2023, 2024. So really look in this year, what is it that is going to say, this is what I'm going to work on to show success, to build that plan for the next year too. Like, start thinking a little bit further ahead.
Yep. Perfect. Okay, so on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up because we went around 10 minutes over. Thank you so much for everyone's questions. Rachel, Nicole, thank you. It was a great conversation and presentation. Reminder, the slides recording will be sent out to everyone who registered. And then as you exit the webinar, you'll be taken to a post-webinar survey. And I would love if you take a minute to tell us what you think. We really take our audience feedback very seriously, like having this as long as we had it today, which is obviously a good thing. So we take your, all your feedback seriously. So thank you so much, everyone. And we will see you next time.
Sounds good. And if y'all have any issues with downloading things, just email us, or if you're interested in working with Mighty Citizen, reach out to us as well.